We're going to introduce our speakers. Welcome to the panel, and this is going to be the final panel we have organized for this symposium on know-how and sharing best practices between these simulations that are taking place through in the world, not only the European level. We have three guests today. One is representing Beta Europe. We have Kristin. We have José Eduardo Fedo, who is an alumni of UIP, European Youth Parliament, who's going to tell us more about what UIP is. And we also have Kristi, who is the founder of UN Youth Albania, and he's going to tell us more about what MEUN stands for. And we are going to clear some of the ongoing feuds that have been seen throughout the symposium. And we are going to try to see what exactly these kind of simulations do for our future, what we gain from them, and what we can do further. Now I would like to give the floor first for short introductions to each of our speakers. Then we are going to talk about how you can address questions, and then we can start the discussion itself. Kristin, if you may, please.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Welcome to yet another workshop of the MEU Symposium. I'm really glad to see so many of you here. I guess most of you have seen me by now. So my name is Kristin. I'm 25. I am currently studying in Prague, as you see in the picture. And I am president of Beta Europe at the moment. I started my MEU career in 2017 in Strasbourg and basically joined the Beta Europe team just after that, and I stuck around. And now it's my third year in the management board in various capacities. So I've seen a lot, obviously, in my time. I have been involved in various MEU organizing teams, but mostly on the Beta Europe side of things. So I have a very strong perspective, like from the organization behind the MEU concept. There's certainly more people with more MEU experience per se than me, but I'm still very much looking forward to this discussion today with our amazing fellow speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. José, if you may.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's very nice of you to invite me for this panel. So my name is José. I'm 25. As said, I'm an alumni of the European Youth Parliament. I was an active member from 2013 2019. I took part in about 36 or 37 events. I was a board member and the president of the board of the European Youth Parliament Portugal. And I was also the vice chair of the board of national committees, which is one of our international bodies in the UIP. I'm now off the organization, therefore being an alumni. And I'm currently a Blue Book trainee at the European Commission. And then I'm very much looking forward to this debate. I think it's very nice to bring organizations together and share some good practices.
Thank you very much. And Kristi?
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here today with an excellent panel. My name is Kristi. I'm old by some conventional standards. But I started one of those people who have done MEUs and MEUNs, so I think I'm not that biased towards one or the other. I started my first MEUN relatively late, let's say, in 2016. Was MEU Vienna. So I started with MEUs first and then moved to MEUNs, and then found the beauty of both the universes, let's say, in both worlds. When it comes to MEUNs, being the founder of the UN Youth Association Albania and MEUN Albania being one of the main or the biggest project it has, I've been both on the side of the secretariat and the organizing team. So in both roles, so I can somehow see how it is to see it from the content point of view and also to see it from the organizational point of view. And let me end it with a cliche phrase. I'm looking forward to a fruitful debate. I'm sorry, it was a joke, but I hope and I feel it's going to be a great discussion, a great workshop.
Indeed. As I said, there have been lots of ongoing discussions about these challenges and what MEUs and MEUs do. But I have to say that I'm really curious about UIP first. But before I go into the question for them, I would like to let our audience that they can ask questions at any time. It would be best so we can have a flow of the discussion. If you wrote your question either in a message to me or just for everyone in the chat, and at the end we are going to let to have a short Q&A directly with the speakers. But right now I'm really curious to see what exactly is the concept of UIP, what you have done in this network, and why is it unique, Jose? Could you please tell us?
Yeah, I'll try and keep it under 30 minutes. No, I'm joking. No, so the UIP is, I'm not sure what your base knowledge is, so I'll just give the basics. So UIP is an educational project which is under the umbrella of the Schwarzkopf Foundation in Berlin. It has national committees in over 35 countries, so it's not just within the EU, so we work with countries of the Council of Europe. Its main concept, though it can be said to be to some extent inspired in simulation of the European Parliament, we have very much developed our own methodology. So each event is divided in three different aspects. So there's team building, which is focused on creating teams, making sure that conflict is addressed and that the committees know how to address that conflict. We have committee work, in which the different committees, and in here we inspire the names and the content of the committees in the committees of the European Parliament, in which the different committees debate topics. And then we have a general assembly in which the different committees present a resolution, which again is inspired in the structure of the European Parliament, though it doesn't copy it strictly. And then there's a general assembly, as I said, where the committees present a resolution, a motion for resolution. So within team building and committee work, the work of the delegates is done in separate committees, whilst in the GA, as I said, the committees are presenting to each other. There are a few teams within organizations. So we normally have an organizing team, which has a head organizer, and organizers and sometimes co-organizers in a few more divisions. We have a chairs team, which is led by the president. He has vice presidents, and then the various chairs of the different committees. And we normally also have a media team with editors and media team members, which can be journalists, video editors, and so on. Another difference I think I'm not mistaken in pointing out is that our target audience for delegates are generally high school students. So we do have some work with university students, but it's mainly with high school students. I'm not sure if you want me to go into the organizational aspects and the whole structure of the organization, but I think this is broadly what we do in events and so on.
We will get there, don't worry. You mentioned that your audience in general are high school students. How do you get to them? How do you reach your audience?
So
which measures do you, I don't know, which mechanism you use, or do you have some sort of a way to go to schools, or how do you reach them?
So one thing I should mention is that obviously there's great diversity between national committees of the UIP. So it's very different how things work here and how things work, how things might work in Portugal, how things might work in other countries. So we do have a very close connection with teachers. So for example, in the European Youth Parliament, Portugal, we had a teacher who was the vice president of the board for a long while. So we work very closely with high schools. We try to keep a network of teachers as well, who help and support us. And we invite teachers as a general rule, of course, again, it doesn't apply everywhere. We have teachers at our events, and we would, for example, have a separate program for the teachers at our events. So we try and keep very close connection with them. There's other ways we do it. We also, a lot of national committees also run the Understanding Europe project, which is a different project from UIP, but is run also by the national committees of UIP in most countries, which help us get to schools. So we put a lot of effort into connecting with schools.
Thank you. I will go now to Kristin because you mentioned already, as you started with MEU Vienna, that I remember correctly, I also attended the same year. And then we went together, if I'm not mistaken, to Barcelona. And I'm pretty sure later you attended Strasbourg, if we just, from our discussions. But I'm really curious, what made you decide on MUNs? What was your journey like? Because you started with MEUs, where you could have gone to Albania back and say, I want to do, for example, a beta branch, or I want to do something regarding MEUs or the European Union. Why did you settle for MUNs, and what made you interested in it?
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Well, yes, MEU Vienna was my first MEU, and I remember I was a member of the European Parliament, MEP S&D faction from Germany, and remember Andrea was the Minister of Hungary in the Council, and she put on quite a show. She was ruling the Council together with Poland back then, and I instantly fell in love with MEUs, and I did 2 more MEUs in the following 4 months. Then what made me switch to MUNs, let's say? I got familiar with this wonderful program, which is called UN Youth Delegate Program, through which every country appoints 2 youth to become part of the national delegation of that country to the UN General Assembly. And since I studied abroad, I studied in Romania for 7 years. I went back home and I wanted to do something for my country with the youth of my country, because I've been involved and engaged abroad, and that was something I wanted to bring there. And you could not, in my opinion, you cannot have a UN Youth Delegate Program without having a UN youth community in the country. And what a UN youth community does best, well, it does MUNs. First of all, so this was one of the reasons why I moved. I switched to MUS, but I went back to MUs also. I went in MU Strasbourg in 2018. This was the main idea. And since in Albania there was no international MUN being organized for the last 5-6 years, I saw this as an opportunity to create this culture. And it's sometimes more rewarding and beautiful when you create something from scratch and how you see it then grow and expand and involve other people. Well, yesterday Claudio mentioned that he didn't like EU law when he was at school. He hated EU law. I think that most of us will agree that we hated studying about the UN even more. So it's not like my passion from the UN started from studying it at school, but it opened somehow the horizon. Since I'm from the Balkans, so I'm not from a member state of the EU. And we Albanians here love, are really in favor of the EU, but still we don't have a Euro-centric approach necessarily. So I wanted to expand and explore a bit more and use somehow the opportunities that the MUN gives, which are different from those from MEU. So I see both similarities and uniqueness in those 2 kind of projects. And I think that each one who hasn't done both is missing out on half the fun, let's say. And that would be like my recommendation to everybody, to try both and then see. If you ask me which one of those I prefer, honestly, I couldn't choose. And it comes as surprising for someone who organizes MUN frequently, but I see the value of both of them, and we will probably elaborate further what you can get from an MUN and what you can get from an MEU, and how then both conferences and worlds can get from each other, let's say.
I have a question. I know that there are lots of charters, to say so, of UN youth around the world. We have one in Romania, for example, and I know that there are several more around the European Union member states. But what makes UN Youth Albania unique? What is the concept that you are standing there? Because I've seen that you have a lot of activity, and I have to say that I'm really impressed overall, since I've been following you guys for a long time. But what makes you really unique, and why would someone actually be a member of UN Youth Albania?
Well, I think what makes our organization unique is its members. So we have as a core value diversity. Usually when you look at UNIAS, UN Youth Association around the world, they are basically students of international relations, political science, law, maybe someone from economics, but that's it. It's like a closed circle. Whether we have few, actually, like 15% of the members study IR or political sciences, but we have business informatics, we have medicine, we have psychology students. And I think that each one of them brings a unique value to the group and makes it even more special because you get different points of views and you're not a closed, hermetic, let's say, community discussing with people who think likewise or study the same or have the same background. I think this is one of the things that makes it special. And the fact that due to this kind of nature, the MUN initiative is the biggest project because it's made of 3 different conferences, events, but we do not do just MUN. So we do discussions, we do coffee talks, we do training. So it's a large community which allows its members to get involved and engaged in different sectors and different fields and add a different value to the community in itself. So this is, I think, from what I've seen, makes it different from UNIA all over the world. And we also have this kind of peculiarity that we are also a UNA. So you have in the world the UN Association and Youth Branch, and UN Association is in most cases former diplomats, ministers, and so on. While here in Albania, we are still youth. I'm the oldest one of the UNA. And so it has put youth on the center. And since it has really good relation between UNA and the UN youth, it has this kind of results. I know that in Romania, for example, UNA and UN Youth Branch did not get along much. But this has been the spirit from the beginning, from youth for youth. And even though some of us grow older and maybe some other will join the UNA, will move to different standards, the youth branch will be, I think, the main focus of it.
Okay, thank you. Indeed, but I'm thinking right now of the following things. So we have UIP, who, if I'm not mistaken, has been around for decades already, maybe 20 years or 30 years or more. And Vita Europe and MEUs have been a concept and an organization that has come around 12 years ago. And it has been building up ever since. Kristin, can you tell us what Vita Europe and MEU concept managed to bring in a new and make it successful? What was the added value in this world of simulations that have been going on already for a couple of decades already?
Thank you for the question, Andrea. As I outlined in my introduction, I've never really been to other simulations. Well, I have, but not involved in the same way as with MEU. So I obviously have a little bit limited perspective, but I think also what I've gathered from the discussions at the symposium so far, really a focus of MEUs is the duality between learning about the European institutions, about European law, discussing actual content that's on the EU agenda, and therefore becoming a much more aware European citizen. And on the other side, the kind of soft skill development of the participants, the networking, the training, speaking skills, training, arguments, negotiation, all of this. I think this is something that MEUs really, really have a great balance of. And I think this is something which is new, especially also the focus obviously on the European Union, which is more and more important nowadays. I think, well, I'm a strong supporter of European integration, so of course one might disagree with me, but in any case, even if you don't agree with everything that the EU is doing, and there's a lot to disagree with, still the starting point should always be understanding how things actually work. And I don't know of any other simulation that gives you or gives the participants a chance to experience that in such kind of realistic settings, with lobbyists, with interpreters, with journalists around, really trying to recreate this kind of real Brussels atmosphere.
We also had a panel on with alumni from MEU World that now work in Brussels, and one of the questions that that was tried to be asked there and to get a response from them on was, are MEUs relevant, and to what extent they are actually useful for their audiences?
Yeah, that's a very complicated question. I don't know if I can condense that into like a 1-minute speech. I definitely do think they're relevant, although I think they could be, they would be even more relevant if we had a greater reach. So I know this has also come up in several panels, and I know that this is a general awareness that we are a little bit stuck in our bubble. As soon as people get into the MEU universe, a lot of them stay around and really manage to build a kind of career out of this. They manage to go to different conferences, become commissioners, chairs, organizers. And then I think for these individuals, it's highly, highly relevant. But I think we should not forget that still the percentage of overall European youth that we reach is rather small. So of course, the overall European relevance could be increased. So this is something that we are definitely working on in Vita Europe for the future. But that is obviously a big vision which consists of many, many small steps that we are trying to initiate now through events exactly like this.
Let's talk a bit about the topics that are being addressed during these three types of simulations, because I know we address, for example, in MEUs, maybe a bit more formal topics. We go directly to the websites and directly to the resources of the European legislation. And I'm really curious to see, for example, in UIP, how do you choose the topics to discuss, or how do you find the most relevant things that attract the audiences, given the fact that, for example, you have high school students who maybe might not be as anchored into the realities surrounding them to discuss some topics that are maybe having a more relevance for the political life outside?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, as I said, I'm not too familiar with the other two organizations, but in UIP we have about, I think, 500 events a year. So that gives us a liberty to have a lot of different topics and so on. So what normally happens is that each event would have a theme. So a general theme, which could be transition to a carbon neutral economy, or the future of technologies and policy making. So a broad theme, and then within those themes, we would come up with different topics for the various committees. We wouldn't, as I said, we are a sort of simulation, I would argue. So we wouldn't necessarily, for example, go too much in depth into what the European Parliament is discussing right now and what could be relevant right now for the work of the European Youth Parliament. We obviously, we try to make topics, as you said, we're working with high school students, so the level of specialization isn't as high as for the other organizations. So we try to make topics which are relevant for them and which we think are relevant for the general society. This sometimes also is influenced by sponsors. So for example, we had a partnership with a few health organizations, and it led to a lot of health focused events. And the same happens with other events. So for example, in my time as when I was in the European Youth Parliament Portugal, we had a partnership with NATO, for example, and they sponsored one of the topics for the session. So this is also something we would use.
Then which are the deliverables of your events, for example? How do you quantify them? Or do you have a certain measurement type of way that you think that you reached an audience and you managed to teach them something?
We're not necessarily like, we do have resolutions and motions for resolutions, but that's really not the main focus of our work. We don't aim to argue that the youth is going to solve the problems that the politicians can't. That's really not our aim. We really focus on getting an experience for the participants. So for example, I think from what the other speakers have said, it seems like we, for example, are more focused on the soft skills and a bit less focused on giving people exactly an experience of EU institutions or UN institutions. And they will get out of the UIP events with knowledge about how the EU works and the topics it works about, but the main focus will be on soft skills, communication, how to handle conflict, how to reach a consensus. In the end, how to be an active citizen in today's world. We do measure, obviously, the number of participants we have. So I think we have about 30,000 participants a year in events of the UIP. We do have other metrics, but then it really does depend a lot on national committee to national committee.
You mentioned at some point that you have around 500 events a year. How long are these events, and where do they take place?
So they vary very much from regional, national, and international levels. So we can have regional sessions. So to be qualified as an event per se, you would have to, again, as I said, have the three aspects of the team building, the committee work, and the General Assembly. So it could be very small events at the regional level that take 3 days. National sessions would take between 3 to 5 days, and then maybe some extra days for officials. And then we also have international events. So this would be international forums, for example, which can go up to 9, 10 days, and then international sessions, which take place 3 times a year with a stronger influence of the umbrella organization that I mentioned. And those would take, if I'm not mistaken, between 9 and 10, and then about 12 to 13 for officials. I say international events, but obviously, there are a lot of delegations from other national committees attending regional and national sessions in other countries. So we are very much focused on this exchange. Okay.
And one more question, and I promise I'm ending with this interrogatory for a short moment. Then I have a question regarding the ultimate goal, and actually this is going to be applicable to all our speakers. Which is the ultimate goal for UIPs, and how do you prioritize in terms of what the participants learn? How do you decide what to give them? The main topics or the main things to be addressed during a UIP event.
Yeah, as I said, this is I may give a more personal answer than what you're looking for, because obviously it's a big network and different national committees will focus on different things. I think for me,
it's actually something that we're looking for. So yes.
I think for me, it's very much developing soft skills of high school students and young people when it comes to especially consensus seeking. I think that's at the core of what we do in UIP. So we work in committees, and the point of the resolution is that it represents the view of all the participants in that committee. So there is a very strong consensus building approach in UIP, which I think is quite different from other organizations, and it doesn't necessarily reflect the work of the European Parliament or other institutions even. So that's really our focus. And then, other soft skills, of course, communication, personal growth in general, and soft skills and public speaking. And, obviously knowledge about the EU and knowledge about the topics. But, I think the broader goal is creating active citizens.
Thank you. Kristin, I think the same question goes to MEUs as well. How do we actually, decide on topics? How relevant are they, and what do we want to deliver to the participants in general when we invite them and we promote all these MEUs that take place around the European Union or outside European Union, organized by beta branches and partners?
Well, I think the content selection is quite a complex process, which we discussed yesterday in more depth. It's definitely a hard choice for each. So first of all, each MEU organizing team decides on their own content. There's so far at least no big database or no specific guidelines from the side of Beta Europe, although the think tank, I think, has that on its agenda. But I think generally MEU organizing teams try to find something that is both relevant now in today's political, economic, social situation. That includes, for example, green topics, also included, for example, migration. Most of the time, we take actual proposals from the European Commission, so either present or past, and maybe adapt them or shorten them a little bit. So it's the relevance, what I mentioned, the kind of debatability, if I can say that, because there are some proposals which would be really interesting and relevant, but they are too complex, they are too technical, they're not interesting, there's no like big kind of party division, so it wouldn't actually be very much fun for the simulation to work with that text. So that's different. And I think what I might underline, although I think most people here are aware of that, in different from the MUNs, as far as I'm aware, and the EYP, is that we don't come up with the text at the conference. Like, we have a text, we have a proposal that we give to the participants, and then they work on it, they amend it, they discuss it, the specific paragraphs, they change something, delete something, but they have a text already that they work with. They are not really asked to kind of come up with something new, like entirely on their own. So that's definitely a difference. And because of that approach, yeah, the relevance and the kind of debatability, I think, are the most important criteria.
Great, but what do you think is the ultimate goal of MEUs in general? Like, what do we want to, where do we want to go in the future? And I think this goes a bit hand in hand with beta goals as well, given the fact that we work together in this regard most of the times.
Yeah, this is, I also, I guess I will give a personal answer, because I don't want to speak for everybody in the beta or MEU network. But I think we try to empower youth, make them more active citizens, make them multipliers. And I think a lot of just the kind of return rate of MEU participants and those who then bring their friends and who maybe stay in organizing teams and bring their friends there really shows that we are achieving that. We are getting people engaged, they stay engaged, they get more people on board, they tell their friends that they had a good experience. So we are kind of building that's the dream, to build a generation of active European citizens who know what's going on, who speak up for what they believe in. And beta as such has no political agenda, so we are not telling people or telling our participants, which side of the story to be on. We just want them to be capable, develop the skills to choose their own side on an informed basis, and then to argue for what they stand for. So I think empowering the youth now to be tomorrow's European leaders, maybe in very general terms.
Thank you. The same question goes to you as well. As UN Youth is doing something completely different. You don't focus on European agenda whatsoever, or any topics that may be discussed even by high school students, or by MEUers in general, that the European Parliament, for example, is discussing. How do you decide on the topic and on its relevance? And again, which is the ultimate goal of this kind of conferences that you organize?
Well, I agree with what Kristin and Jose said about the selection of the topics. We do it building upon the concept of interconnectivity, which is implemented recently in an MEUN conference, which means that all the committees are interconnected with one another, and you choose an overarching topic, and then you explore it in 3 different dimensions. So first of all, you decide on the big topic, the main topic, which is obviously chosen related also to what's relative in the Albanian context, in the regional context, and then what's debatable, like Kristin said, in general. But then from that point, then you try to explore it into what this topic can be seen from the social dimension, from the economic dimension, and from the environmental dimension, for example. So to make a holistic approach on this topic. And you do it, and MUNs have evolved, and they do not just simulate UN committees or UN organs, for example. They can simulate the Arab League, OIC. We did the OIC Ministerial Council, for example, one of the committees last year, because Albania currently holds the OIC chairmanship. So it was quite relevant for our countries. So one of the committees we did within our MUN was the OSCE Ministerial Council, and then we had ECOSOC and UN Women, for example. And we also have done the Concilium ones, one of the 3 topics. And I know many other MUNs also include some element from the EU in their committees. So the main point is this: try to find a main topic, and then how you can address that topic in different dimensions. And in the end, you have an overall approach to it. Well, when it comes to the ultimate goal, well, it differs, I think, from different kind of MUNs. You have large-scale MUNs with 500 and plus participants, and I personally am not a big fan of those huge conferences. And you have also local MUNs, but the main goal, I think, is it's not just for participants to learn more about the UN. Like I said, it could be diverse. It could have EU, Council of Europe, Arab League, and so on. Is for them to develop their skills, of course, to foster a community, and to equip youth with some soft skills and knowledge that can be useful not only on the job market, for labor market, for example, but also to turn them into active citizens. I mean, you get some kind of information. I know for sure, and I think everybody agrees that I still remember the proposals that I have debated upon on every single MEU I have been to. I know it was Dublin III regulation and directive on tobacco products in Vienna in 2016, and so on. I still have some information from those proposals and regulations, and there are topics that you can further explore and debate, but also come up to actions. For example, if you do MUNs, you know what Resolution 1325 stands for. It's Women, Peace and Security, and you know that every country has to have a national plan of implementation of that. And as an active citizen, you can build upon that knowledge and create a project, an event that addresses that issue. So you can be an active citizen inspired by this topic. So it's not that the ultimate goal is, it is surely to create and foster a community of MUNers or MUNers, but it's not just that. So it's not just create people who go to 3, 4, 10, 15 MUN conferences, but spark them into them the idea to move towards action. So this knowledge to do something with this experience and to equip them with this experience. In our regard also, and I think everybody can say the same, when organizing a conference, it's not the main focus, should not be organizing a wonderful conference. It's at the same time making sure that it is replicable. So the next year conference can be as good as this, or maybe even better. And this means also being careful when choosing the organizing team and the secretariat, but have an element of sustainability and development even between the organizing team. Because if you do manage to organize a wonderful conference, but next year you have nobody left to do the same, I think you have come out short in organizing the event.
I have a question for you here, because I know you've been more not politically active, but actually you've been taking the next step as well, from simulations to actually get involved in real life. How relevant do you think these kind of simulations are for any kind of experiences outside in real life? And if, for example, if you want to work for the UN or for any similar organization, international organization?
Well, honestly, I think they are a lot. They are helpful in many ways. For example, I heard even yesterday the phrase that MUN's rules of procedures are really strict and formal and decorum to observe. But you know that they help you understand the logic between rules of procedure when you actually are in a position of, when you're part of a national delegation or representation or mission to a diplomatic forum. This happened to me last year when I was part of the national delegation of Albania to the UNESCO General Conference. And I could understand really easily the rules of procedure of the actual conference going on. And Albania has a really tiny mission. There is 2 people, like the ambassador and the assistant. So our role as youth delegates was to expand the presence of our country to that commission. And we can say that the experience from MEUs and MUNs sharpen your instincts to understand some dynamics that's going on into geopolitics and diplomacy. So you could see and you could somehow anticipate the moves or reactions that different countries would have related to a specific topic. And then you can add that as an asset when you bring when you advise your mission or your delegation to what to act and what to prepare for that. Even though rules of procedure might sound boring, and to a certain extent they really are, what you can take from that is learn the logic behind it. And once you have learned the logic in real life delegations, and you can catch really quickly, you can catch up really quickly with that. So they are important, decorum and so on. But if I might share like a funny moment from that experience, you know, when you're in MEU, it depends on the chairing style, obviously. But chairs sometimes are really strict and rigid, and they can cut out your the floor if you overpass your time and so on. Where in real life, it's not exactly like that, because chairs have to have to deal with heads of states and ministers, and they cannot really do that. And when we're in the General Conference of UNESCO, the Minister of Education of Colombia was making a speech about education, including children, no one left behind, and so on. And I was looking at a certain moment, a piano sound started playing. And please don't judge me on this, because I'm usually smarter than that. But at that moment, I thought, because it created like an emotional vibe, you know, like a dramatic thing. It added dramatic effect to her speech. And I thought, well, is it on purpose? I mean, is it for real that they're playing music, instrumental music? And then I noticed it another time during another intervention, and then I understand what it was. They started playing music when you overpass your time limit for the speech. So it's not like the chair asking to cut to finish the speech, but they started playing music, and the more you talk, the louder the music was in the hall, and everybody understood that, you know, you have to cut your speech short. But it was a funny moment for me, and I don't know, to have this kind of way how to make the speaker understand that he or she has to conclude the speech.
I have another question. How competitive is the world of MUNs? Because I know, for example, of course, every single type of simulation manages to offer some and develop some soft skills. But let's move past that. How competitive is it? Because, for example, we had also this kind of conversation regarding the awards, whether we should have awards or not at our events, whether they do more good than bad, whether they are relevant, irrelevant. And I really like to see your opinions, all the three of you, on this topic as well, and how competitive it is. Also, what you do better than the rest of the simulation. And for example, why myself, for example, or any of the persons here in the audience, or those that are going to see it later, would attend either MEUs, MUNs, or UIP to gain what exactly more than soft skills. I will start with Kristi, since this was started for him, but then I would move to Kristin and Jose as well.
Well, I would like to break a lance in favor of awards. I know it's a debatable, controversial somehow topic, but and I want to name them awards and not prizes, because there's a nuance in those words, which is important to keep, because it depends from the viewpoint that you have. I think that awards are a kind of incentive for participants to commit more to the conference. And if a participant commits more, it's more serious, it's more prepared, brings something else, it benefits the committee and the conference as a whole, because the level of discussion is better. People get somehow involved more, because they create a sense of healthy and positive competition. So everybody thinks that they should step up their game to catch up with the new development. So it ultimately helps. And the argument against giving awards, according to me, falls short if you see it from the point of view that if you're giving an award, you're somehow neglecting the work of the others, which is not true. You're just rewarding somebody who put more effort than somebody else. So I do not see the conception without, I mean, the idea behind not giving awards, sometimes one side of it is seen like this, that if I'm not interested in obtaining an award, nobody else should. So, or if I do not get an award, nobody else will. So it's not about who is getting it, but it's the fact that I'm not getting it. So I think that especially during the last days of the debate, of the committee sessions, and it helps. It's an incentive that makes people do the extra step in the sense of their commitment and how they are prepared. And also it helps, for example, more senior delegates, participants. For example, somebody has been to 5 or 6 MEUs or MEUNs, and now the next step is I want to try out how much I've gotten from all these conferences, how better I have become. And I want to measure all the skills against the best competitors out there. And one of the ways, let's say, indicators I do that is if I get close to winning an award. So I don't think that this kind of approach damages the experience for the others. It can be helpful. It can, if it is seen in this sense. And yes, it does get competitive, but in the MEUN world, it helps with the fact that you have committees that are different, have different level of participants. You have a beginners committee, you have an intermediate committee, and you have experts committee. And this makes it easier because you have awards even in the beginners committee, and you have different awards in the experts committee or intermediary committee. So it does not sanction or penalize those who have not a lot of experience, because even they will get an award, and it gives them an extra push, let's say, to prepare more, to do better, to write more resolutions, to write more amendments, to convince and negotiate everybody else to join to a common discussion. So it's not about, the award does not go to the person who makes a big show, but to the person who is more constructive and who helps the committee or the parliament or the council to reach a consensus and find a solution. This is my personal point of view regarding the awards and competitiveness during an MEUN.
Kristin, do you think we should adopt this approach as well in MEUs, or should we still make it, I don't know, maybe up to one in some MEUs, or should it be a generalized thing, or we should just ignore whatsoever the concept of awards? Because I know we also in this universe, we have different opinions, and some MEUs do it, some MEUs don't. What's your take on this? Your personal one. It doesn't have to be, of course, official.
Yeah, as you said, there's quite different opinions on this. I'm personally not a big fan of awards because I'm also not a very competitive person, and for me, it's not an incentive to work harder or whatever, because I'm not even, I don't really take any pride from this. But I have also been at conferences where they really wanted to give out awards, so we did, and the people were really happy. So I mean, I can kind of see both sides. I am a big fan of this kind of funny awards, or what we do in MEUs a lot, this kind of where the participants themselves elect, and there's actually various chances, not just the best delegate, because I wouldn't even know what criteria to put there. But I don't know, funniest, best dressed, best dictator, best Nigel Farage. I don't know. I really like this kind of stuff because it really helps bring people together on the last day and kind of remember some of the crazy moments. And also in MEUs, I think we have how to say, like, some special positions. You have like the faction leader, you have the people who go to trials, the rapporteurs, the people who go to the press conferences. So these are all small little extra roles which people, if you are more ambitious, if you want to, I don't know, be louder, if you want to represent the others, speak on behalf of your faction, there's all these ways that you can take it to the next level and be more involved without really needing to it's more of like a natural leadership position than like an external award. So I think this, for me, I think this kind of recognition for those people who work harder, we already have that in this respect. Yeah, but this is my personal opinion. Of course, I know that a lot of people might disagree with me on this.
Again, the topic is something still debated among ourselves in MEU, so it's quite understandable as everyone has a personal position on it. Jose, do you have these kind of words? I mean, just to put you in context, we have words for like who is more like Nigel Farage, for example, or who is best dressed, but most likely to end up in jail, I've seen. Best dictator, best most likely to run the European Union, for example, and so on. Do you think that in UIP should there is some sort of competitiveness that should be, let's say, built on, or do you have something similar that you would like to add here?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was talking about the various teams we have at events, so we have a media team, a chair team, and an organizing team. I forgot about another team, which kind of, tells you a bit my personal opinion about it as well, which is the jury team. So in most regional and national events, we would have a jury team. So this would be composed by a head of jury and one of two juries as well. I've been part of a few. And the main role is to evaluate the delegates, so the high school students, and to select them for other conferences. So for example, a regional selection conference would select delegates to a national conference, or they could also select delegates to go to conferences abroad, and then the national selection conference would then select for international forums or international sessions. There are obviously other ways of getting into this event. So you can apply as a delegate to some international forums individually without being selected. But we do have that component. I would not say that it's due to any aim to incentivize, but then again, this varies a lot between national committees to national committees. So I've been in national committees in which the jury is secret, so the delegates would know that there is a jury being evaluated. I personally, and in Portugal, we have a very open approach. So we as the jury would meet with all the delegates, explain them what we're doing, and just basically tell them that we're really doing a job that doesn't really matter. We're just selecting them because there's events to go to, and people, we need to have some criteria to send people. But even if they're not selected, they can also go to other events. So there are very different approaches to selection, which I guess goes into prizes and awards. But we wouldn't. We would do it mainly on an instrumental basis. I would say, though, I mean, I think that seems to be, at least from when I'm hearing, maybe one difference between organizations, that I think in UIP people learn the most when they're officials, so not necessarily when they're being delegates and so on. So I've participated in about 37 events. I've been a delegate 4 or 5 times. I was an official all the other times. And for the officials, we don't have any system of prizes, awards, or anything. So you can be the best chair. Doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously there's a reputational aspect, and if you want to go to other events, it helps if people know you've done a good job. But that's really all it is.
Well, before we move into the Q&A session with the audience, I do have one more question for each of you, which regards the networks and alumni. For example, what is the key of the success of your network, Jose, in UIP? Because I've seen that you are literally all over the place. I mean, even just looking at the website, you see that you have a network of 200,000 people. How do you build it? How do you engage with it? And how supportive are the members of the alumni towards the activity of UIP still going on? How involved are they?
Yeah, so in here, I mean, I would have to highlight the work we do at the international level. So as I said, we have an umbrella organization, which is the Spashkov Foundation. And we really put a lot of work in bringing the national committees together. And I think that's a key aspect of the UIP. So we have a charter that all the national committees have signed. We have policies that apply to all the national committees, that the national committees vote in what we call the board of the national committees, which is one of the organizations, the international bodies that I was a part of. So we work very closely at the international level and with the Spashkov Foundation as well. In specific, when it comes to alumnus, it used to be the case that it was very dependent on national committees. So in UIP Portugal, we have a system of honorary members. It was very much informal. However, over the past few years, and with the help of the umbrella organization, we've started creating a network of alumnus. So we now have alumni events, obviously not now with the coronavirus, but for example, there was an international session I think 2 summers ago in I think Czech Republic, and there was an alumni event where the session was with about 200 people, and then there were 300 alumni that flew there for a 3-day event during that session as well. So we're putting a lot of effort into that. I believe, again, I'm not actively involved anymore, but I believe we're hiring an alumni coordinator to coordinate activities. We also have a mentorship scheme for alumni. So, we're really trying to put a lot of effort and chip into the fact that, we have a lot of alumni, as you said, and a lot of them are in quite interesting positions professionally.
How do you make it sustainable, and how do you continuously renew it? It's a very important aspect that, for example, I myself have been very interested in.
So I don't think I understood your question. Could you repeat?
How do you keep this network built up all the time, and you make it sustainable, and you continuously renew it? As it's a lot of effort besides those events, but how involved are those alumni in the events itself that you are organizing? Do you bring them all the time in to meet the students, or how do you work exactly around this?
So when you mean alumni, you mean people like me who aren't active anymore, or you mean officials who were participants before?
New people and also officials. How do you build?
So when it comes to alumni, no, they're not really involved in many events, as far as I know, and as far as my experience has been. It really has been a separate thing that has been created. Yes, I mean, we need a lot of human resources when it comes to officials. So, an event, a national event would have maybe 30 to 40 officials. So that's quite a lot of people. I think it really does come down to the fact that we reach a lot of young people. If we reach a lot of young people, we have a lot of people interested in being officials and so on. We have in the recent years started getting a bit worried about some welfare issues, some people doing way too many events, for example, burning out. So those concerns are starting to rise, which I think is quite important. There also this obviously creates inequalities. So if we're talking about, people doing events all across Europe, well, not everyone has the money to do events all across Europe. So we're also trying to focus on, or there have been efforts to focus on providing reimbursements for plane tickets and so on, especially to officials, which have been increasing, but are obviously, a bit difficult for non-governmental organizations. So it is a big effort. I think especially after a few years when events grew a lot. So, I think a few years ago, events really jumped. So we had an increase in 100 events in like 1 or 2 years, I think, all across Europe. So there was a bit of a strain on human resources, but now we've stabilized at about 500 events for a few years now, which means that, we've been increasing our membership base. And with that, we can sustain this level of events.
Well, thank you very much. Jose mentioned a very interesting thing, the importance of the umbrella organization. And I was wondering, and I would like to ask Kristin, because Beta Europe has moved its seat in Brussels. I was wondering which is the reasoning behind it, and how important is it from now on to build on the network and to work with the alumni, and to actually make Beta Europe bigger, if it has any relevance.
Thank you, Andrea. That's I would say the answer is yes, it's extremely relevant. The hard thing is how to do it. Well, so the main reasoning behind federalizing Beta Europe and establishing this seat in Brussels was, well, to be closer to the heart of the EU, so that we can start to maybe, as Beta Europe, network with other organizations better that are also seated in Brussels. We can actually maybe start going to some local events, engage with stakeholders better, and also grow this umbrella association aspect, so that in the end we'll be able to provide more resources to the branches. In practice, this has been difficult so far. So the federalization was achieved on paper basically in 2018. We are still working on the transition. That means we are still not making as much use of it as we could, also because we don't have a lot of management board members currently based in Brussels. But we do have a lot of Beta alumni that are in Brussels, some permanently, some in and out for traineeships and things. So definitely this is something that is very relevant for us and that we will need to work on, because those alumni are a big resource for us. Even we saw now just the panel yesterday with some speakers that actually made it to the real EU. How was their path, and maybe what younger MEU participants can learn from them. So this is something that we can definitely we should make more use of in the future. But as I said, it's difficult to implement this, but it's on the agenda. It has been now for a few years, I have to say. But we kept getting caught up with more urgent problems, but it's still on the agenda of the HR team also for this year to think of an alumni concept, because there's also, I don't even know how many there are, but definitely thousands by now. So very relevant.
Thank you very much. Kristi, do you think it is important to professionalize the way these organizations act, and to make sure that we reach more and to come to with more and build a network, and to actually build the participants towards something greater?
Absolutely, yes. I think it's really important to do that. And after hearing Jose and Kristina invite them for their network and structure they have, their organizations have actually, because there is not something similar in the MUN world actually. And when it comes to networking, it's more on a bilateral, trilateral basis than on a federation or that has some kind of structure and helps feeds, let's say, its member associations. There was an idea of creating an MUN franchise, actually, which was a bit too business-minded in this sense, but the idea behind it was to build a brand of MUN, have MUNs all over Europe be part of this brand, and have a set of performance indicator and quality assurance that each MUN having this branch will assure to its participants, and share the list of participants, share the pool of chairs, share the pool of secretary generals, and so on. So there has been an idea like this, which I think it would benefit every MUN conference around Europe, but it's hard to go there, to reach that fact. And I mean, Kristina mentioned that the idea of turning beta, moving its seat, it took a while and has been discussing for a bit. So it takes time to build something like this, but I would be in favor of moving to this professional way of structuring and organizing. And it's in the benefit of all, I think, because every MEU organizers, one of the concerns is to find good participants, right? At the beginning, because there are so many conferences going on around, and what your local conference will attract, let's say, international participants. Well, on the local side, so building capacities for your organization, I think it's important to have, not to just organize a conference, but to have several events that accompany that. So for example, we have created, after we first did it, we realized that to build this and create this community, to foster this community, you have to have a training on MUN. So we do a training on how to prepare as a delegate, how to write a position paper, how to write a resolution, what's the fun in representing a small country, for example, and not just focusing on big countries. Then we have this national scale simulation games just for Albanians use, and then we have the big international one. So it's a trio that goes on. It's a yearly project that goes on in parallel to ensure that you build capacities and network within your country. So you have a pool of chairs or senior participants or senior organizers in your country through organizing these smaller events that will assure that your big event will be highly successful, and also the other next year's event will also be successful.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to open the floor for questions from the audience. I believe that Ivo had a question at some point, if he would like to address it right now. If not, we can just take any question that anyone would have.
Okay, so like you asked me to write it down, so I did. So basically, throughout this this symposium, and this is something I've heard repetitively by MEU people, because I come from a lot of worlds. I come from competitive debate. I come from MUNs. I come from like any type of simulation. Really, I just love it. It's really enriching to do these things. And I like the competitive aspect of this, because the competitive aspect, it's something that brings the best that you can be out of you. Like having a goal makes you want to be better, right? And it's not it's not something that makes the organization seem or look good. It's something that actually helps the individual. It helps you grow. Even if your name is not in a boring piece of paper with something saying best delegate or something like that, that you can put in your CV and think that's, oh, this is so awesome. It actually makes you feel better about yourself, because you put all that you were worth, all of your effort into that. And you, even if you don't win, you feel much better afterwards. Like I speak for myself, like after doing a simulation, I go back to like #real life, like classes, exams, writing essays and things like that. I go back way more motivated, you know? And that comes from that, you know, competitive sort of element, you know? I would really be sad to lose it for the sake of emotional empathy for the people who don't get it and blah blah blah, you know, like. So we were talking throughout this workshop in particular, like this specific workshop, about how to professionalize the simulations, like not only MEUs but MUNs and etc. How about, instead of just printing a piece of paper saying best delegate for someone who is arbitrarily declared the best delegate? I mean, how do you even define such a thing, right? You get like a group of the people that the chairs considered like the most participative, the most like engaging, the ones who like really give it their all. And you establish partnerships with fundraiser partners, because you're always going to do this, right? So like when you try and establish partnerships with other organizations or entities, you're always trying to pull money, right, to fund your expenses. But that's hard to get. Like it's very rare that an organization or an entity will want to just give money. Like that's fucking rare. Like who would even want that, right? How about organizing internships? That would be worthy of putting in your CV. That would professionalize these simulations. It would not just be something that, oh yeah, I'm very active in my extracurricular activities. Here's a bunch of simulations that I participated in. No, like actually.
A bit, and you mentioned this very interesting thing of internships, and I would like to ask now the speakers on this, whether they could professionalize these events providing these sorts of opportunities. So we also go into this question. If Kristi, for example, you may say.
Yes, I do agree. That's a great idea to be explored and to try it out. It might be difficult from some country, for example. In Albania, which one of you would be interested to do an internship here, for example, for an Albanian institution or I don't know, for an institution? Maybe yes, you can have an agreement with the OSCE presence or the EU delegation in Albania or I don't know, the UN in Albania, and you can ensure that, but it might be a bit tricky regarding a working permit, visa, and so on. So for some countries, it might be more difficult to do. For other countries in the EU, I see it, I mean, it takes a lot of effort, but obviously it'd be worth it, in my opinion. Try to do something like that.
Kristin?
What if you try to contact like specific entities? Like if you're organizing an MUN in, say, France or something, you contact the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of France and ask if they have a consulate where one of their, like say, one of your participants is French in your simulation. And he's a very active participant. He's very good.
I believe that this is also part of the partnerships that can be built for each MEU. But can we have also Kristin's opinion on this, as this is quite a relevant matter?
I think it's a very nice idea. As I mentioned before, this was just my personal opinion about the awards. You know, I'm totally fine with MEUs doing that. But this internship ideas, I don't think we've discussed that before. I don't think it will be very easy to arrange because especially ministers of foreign affairs or any state institutions are very picky. You need to go through several security checks and rounds of application usually. So I don't know how realistic it would be to promise something. Maybe, you know, give a recommendation or something, but with private partners, for example, I can very much see that potential. So I think it's a rather long-term goal. I don't think that's something we might achieve maybe next year, but I would love to discuss this further. I think it has good potential.
I would like to address this question as well to Jose. In the meantime, if anyone else would like to ask another question, please raise a hand and you will just be ask the question after she's answered. Jose, do you also, in UIP, can it be provided this kind of opportunities, or it is something that it's already been done, or maybe it is planned for the future?
Not really, no. I don't think we've ever discussed any of this sort of incentivizers, I guess. I mean, we're not really focused on, you know, getting people jobs or work experience and so on. I mean, we work on the non-profit sector, and you know, we're focused on our events. I think this is an internal discussion for you guys to have on your organization. In UIP, we haven't discussed anything similar to this. Yeah, as I said, when it comes to selections, the only two types of selections or prizes or awards we have is people being selected to other events, and then obviously officials being selected for one specific event they apply for. So that's that. Yeah.
Thank you. Anis had a question, if you may.
Yes, Andrea, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for the nice talk. Well, I would like to ask a question, and I hope that the four of you, and maybe any of the participants, answer also this question. Some maybe simulations or some conferences, I would like to join this question to Ivo's one, because I see we agree in many points together. Some simulations or some conferences organize just the events, but after making the participants wait a lot for certificates or just for the awards, they send certificates without writing their positions, I mean. President, vice president, head organizer. Well, recently I was sent one of the certificates. One in my life, it was like that. What is your comment on that? And why do you think that some organizers, they have positions in the beginning? They write, for example, in the booklet and everywhere, head organizer, chief organizer, and many positions. Then in the certificate or on the certificate, they don't write that. position. What are your comments, please, on that positively? And how would you change the situation if it's available by knowing that participants are the most important people so for the event? For me, participants are 100% the event. I don't care about the organizing team because we are the organizing team. We can change ourselves and we need the feedback for just people, not for us. Well, this is my opinion and I hope that it's useful. Thank you. And I'm waiting for the answer.
Would any of the guest speakers like to take this question and comment?
I think I'd need to hear the question again in one sentence.
I will simplify the question. So some simulations conferences in general, they make publicity about the conference. They write their positions. It's like picture, head, the chief organizer, vice president, etc. Then when they send the certificate after making some people waiting for that, maybe a month or 2 weeks or just after the event, they don't write, they write just the names, they sign, and they send it, especially now online, without writing, for example, those positions that were, for example, president of one of the betas, doesn't write below president, just writes the name.
I would like to
With the
get in
signature.
here with something. I'm pretty sure maybe you might have been in contact with the wrong people or maybe with the wrong events, because in all the events I have attended, at least in MEUs and also in MEUs, there were always written on the certificates exactly what everyone has been doing, including either the role or the activities that they have been doing during the event. And now never has I seen it that certificate has it been sent late or with no relevance whatsoever. So maybe you could, just address to the organizing team and see what the situation was, as I think this is not one of the practices that we have generally, either in MEUs, MUNs, EYP, or any of these kind of simulations or events. I think this might sort out some issues.
Let me confirm it. Well, as we are in democracy and we are here to promote good levels about MEU in general and help us understand it well, I will precise it. One MEU, so recently after a month or a few days, they sent the certificate without writing the positions of that, just the names. I don't know who are those people. Just they signed the certificate. They didn't write this certificate certifies, just certificate and that. Well, I sent an email, but I didn't change it. This is the clarification to avoid any misunderstandings, please, because for me, talking face-to-face is the best way for communication. Thank you for understanding.
Thank you. No, I fully understand your point. Maybe this is an isolated case, but I don't think any of the speakers right now can actually address this, because it's not really in their activity. But we do have time for one more question that can be addressed to any of the speakers, and it would maybe more related to this, what has been discussed today. Please, if anyone has a question. Well, given the fact that there is no question, and I assume that it's also a bit late, as we, as usual, went over the time limit allocated for the workshops. But let's face it, they have been really interesting, and there were lots of things that needed to be discussed and cleared in a way. I would like to thank again our speakers, Kristi, and Jose, for joining today's panel. It was definitely one of the most illuminating discussions we've had. If anyone has any other questions, please don't hesitate to get back to us, or just write to MEU Symposium, or to reach to any of the speakers. Right now, just concluding remarks from our speakers of, let's say, 20 seconds each. Kristin?
Well, thank you very much for being here. I would very much like to explore future partnerships with the EYP in some regards, and you, Kristi, as well. So we'll definitely be in touch with that. Thank you for your attention today. And if this discussion has spurred any any dialogues that you would like to continue. We have 2 more workshops at the symposium. Of course, you can always write us an email. We have the Beta Year Facebook group, Symposium Facebook group. You can come join the Beta team or one of the MEU organizing teams and try to find out for yourself and find solutions for all of these big problems.
Kristin? Oh, Jose was already talking, please.
No, I mean, I guess just to thank you for inviting me. I think it's quite important. I think it's useful for us to get out of our own bubbles and see what other organizations are doing. It's a good check on our own assumptions in the work we do, and it also, might increase our creativity in finding solutions for our problems. So I want to thank you for this. I think this is a very nice initiative, and I was very happy to take part.
I will join Kristin and Jose with thanking everybody for attending the workshop and also for all the questions that were addressed. I would love to see the discussion of this workshop continue and transform into actual collaborations and partnerships. And I think, I saw like 7 or 8 UNIA members following and attending this workshop, and I do believe that their interest in MEUs has exponentially grown during this this symposium. So I do believe that some of them will try MEUs next year, and it'd be wonderful if some of those speakers, all the participants, will try MUN next year. So I'm positive on that. I'm optimistic, and I would love to see that happen.
Thank you very much. For sure, we are going to keep the dialogue open. Thank you very much, everyone, once again, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the last 2 workshops that we have organized during the symposium. Have a nice day.